I spoke to the head of the Government Spending Control Team, otherwise called Efficiency Unit in the Ministry of Finance, Mrs. Patience Oniha. In this interview, all she has to say sounds completely new and innovative. Mrs. Patience Oniha, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's understand now. The efficiency unit in the Ministry of Finance is supposed to cut costs of government, help establish expenditure amounts and the rest of it. But do we really need this unit? What's it all about?
Thank you very much. By way of background, the efficiency unit really was, if I may use the word, the brainchild of the Honorable Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun. Okay, as you would know, as most Nigerians would know, we've had challenges with revenues, haven't been hit very hard by a decline in oil prices. Okay, but even before then, if we go back in the days when oil prices were high, we've also always had to battle with this issue about the ratio of capital to recurrent, in the budget. And we've always said that for the long term, really, we need to invest more in capital. That just makes ordinary sense, okay? But we always haven't been able to keep to the target that we had set at some point of capital being 30%. Okay, so what we're saying is this problem has been there a long while, or the challenge, if we may use that word. And the way we've tried to manage it is for recurrent, it would seem that some expense items are fixed, meaning you need a minimum amount to keep government going. So technically, it is what is left that we apply to capital, and that sort of is not good for planning purposes or for overall growth and development. Okay, so the phase we are in now is to say, okay, we've been spending so much, and what we've done is to cap expenditure limits. This agency, this ministry, this is how much we can afford to give you this year. What we're doing now, next level, is to say for those monies we are even spending that we're able to release to the MDAs, meaning the ministries, departments, and agencies, could we have done more with that same amount or use less to achieve the same results that we achieved? So the efficiency unit technically is trying to look at how we are spending, the pattern of our spending, and if that is the best way to spend. Okay, and it's in, it has two main objectives, I would say. One, the overriding objective is, like I said, to get better value for money and see where we can save costs. But two aspects to it, how we're going to achieve that is look at the work processes, procedures. Are there inefficiencies? Are there elements of waste where we can save some money? And then the other part is to look at the procurement process, and the Honourable Minister did allude to that in her statement when the steering committee of the efficiency unit was inaugurated. Did talk about how can we manage the procurement process better to make it efficient and more cost effective. So that's in a nutshell what we're about.
You see, I'm wondering, let's understand basically the nitty-gritty of this all-important job, because, I mean, there's been lots of wastages in the past. How do you intend to reverse this trend of more on capital than expenditure, than recurrent, rather?
Okay, I think one way to look at it broadly is to say, if we can save, whatever savings we can make. Remember what we said was we're spending money, but could we have achieved more with less money? Okay? And or could we have gotten a better output with that same amount of money? So if there are cost savings from there, obviously it means more money is available for capital or any other projects or activities that the government may want to fund. Okay, so by doing that, more money is available for capital. But don't forget that government as a whole is also trying to diversify sources of funds. So it's like saying there are several strategies towards achieving that objective.
The president recently, maybe not so recent, drew up a committee to go into issues of this nature, and they had some recommendations. Are you aware? Are you going into these? Are you going to apply any of this into your job?
Okay, I think we have a very clear mandate. Okay, so the establishment of the efficiency unit was cleared with Mr. President. So we're clear about what our mandate is, and that's what we're going to run with.
So how are you going to go about it, basically?
Two parts. We're doing, thankfully, in other countries there are similar institutions, and it's interesting when you do the research and find that advanced countries like Canada, the United Kingdom, France, Denmark. Basically, look at the G7, the G20 countries have had similar institutions and still have them. Okay, so what that tells you is that it's not only Nigeria that has a challenge with looking at how better to spend its money, but even the advanced countries are looking at that, and you know they are far ahead of us, which is why they are called advanced. Okay, so what we're going to do, this is not a top-down approach of saying, okay, which is one of the approaches we've had before, just cap expenditures. Okay, you agency, you say you need 2 billion for, in 2015, we can only afford 1.2, take it, you know, and just go. Okay, this is not that approach. What we're going to be doing first level, so there's a whole process of engaging with the stakeholders, okay, because we are not necessarily going to implement those changes. We're going to work with them. So one approach is to, the first level is to get the public aware, which is what we're doing, about what it is. So you have a general overview and an understanding. Apart from being the press, you're also Nigerians, okay? So, but the second level is to then engage very closely with the MDAs. And that's what has worked. We have to get them engaged at the very high levels and the lower levels. And the way it works there is that really you work with the efficiency units, work with the officers in the MDAs to review processes and procedures within those MDAs to see how they can be improved upon. Second level, so that's in terms of reviewing work processes and procedures. A number of you have interacted with the government, so when you compare us to the private sector, I'm sure you can see that there are differences and there are things we can learn from that side to make work processes and patterns more effective, okay? I don't want to say too much of what we're doing, but there are so many things that you look at and you know that we could improve on them. So we're going to work with those MDAs, look at those processes. We do have some ideas already, which is the whole purpose of research and connecting with similar organizations offshore. Identify them and then agree this is the change that is needed. And that change is not a one-off. I like to make that change because it then becomes the process for doing this activity. Even if it is the process of preparing for a meeting, there are probably things that we can work around that to make more efficient. So we identified some major ones, and we're working with the MDAs to implement. So there'll be engagement at high and low levels to get that work. So that's one part of it. The second part really, and I like to speak to this also because the Honorable Minister did include that in the statement that she released during the inauguration. Clearly, we're going to look at procurement, okay? We hear a lot about government contractors, government suppliers, but they're also users of those services, so they provide us with those services. I think we're going to look at all of that and see what best practices from other countries that have adopted, that have efficiency units. They call them by different names, but let's use efficiency units for now. And also look at what operates in the private sector. We'll look at that in conjunction with the Public Procurement Act, which guides government procurement, and see what mileages we can get from there. But I can assure you that there are quite a number already from the work we have done. So we're putting all of those things together. Those you can present centrally and take it from there. So we're working with the MDAs in a collaborative manner, and we're going to work also with the Nigerian stakeholders in a collaborative manner. We'll tell you at each stage what we're doing.
How would you really, I'm just curious, because how would you really get them to come out to cooperate efficiently, effectively with you, knowing that what you're coming to do is come to change the status quo?
Okay, when you say change status quo, I think there's a common understanding that we can do something about the status quo, that the status quo is not in our best interest. We can do better with that. And I'd like to just take you a bit to the example of Canada when I was reading their material. They got to a stage where, okay, they tried everything, privatization, commercialization, capping, they've done all of those, and most countries have done all of that, right? So they then get to a level, okay, there isn't anything else to privatize or outsource or commercialize, then let's look closely. Let's drill down and look at our cost and see if we're doing good. Okay, so I think there's a general understanding. But with Canada, what then happened, they got to a stage where it was like their Minister of Finance by another name, they called them different names, member of cabinet or something, who said, really, this government will come to an end if we keep spending like this. So if you look at government's revenues, they've dropped by more than 50%. And looking at the budget, we're looking at 38 per barrel, and the outlook is not so good. So I think it is in all of our interest to change that. So like I say, what we're going to do, we're going to get the buy-in of the top government officials. So we're talking about the ministers, we're talking about the directors. Then we'll work with the desk persons. You'll be surprised what a secretary can tell you about how to improve his work. So we're going to be working with nominated people from those MDAs. So first there's a buy-in at the top. All of those sensitization would have taken place at those senior levels. So there's support already. It is then to work with the people and say, we can't continue like this. Thankfully, we're still able to pay salaries. We can still have paper and other things to work. But if we keep going at this rate, then, we'll all be the worse for it. Will we still have any money left for capital budget? Will we still be able to pay salaries? I mean, the history, the problem with salary arrears recently, isn't it? So I think we all have an interest in making this work.
You keep citing Canada. Are you collaborating with international bodies on this?
Not yet, but we probably would. Why I keep mentioning those names is that when a new thing like that comes, you want to find out what the literature is about it. And typically there will be, some best practices, some lessons learned from the other one. So where there were issues, where there were failures, you make sure you don't, you don't fall into that same trap. So for now, we do expect, not hope, it's on our agenda, if I may say so, part of our work plan to collaborate with one or more of them that would be willing to provide that service. But there's a lot on the internet, and we have dug up quite a bit.
Yeah, I mentioned that because next thing we're going to talk about is the corruption that is deep-seated in the civil service. And
okay.
Of course, some people will say when you want to fight corruption just might fight back.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll take a break right now. We're still with Mrs. Patience Oniha, the Head Efficiency Unit in the Ministry of Finance. Please stay with us.
Our vision is that our efficiency unit will be a change agent and a catalyst for improving the management and delivery of public services so that we make sure that every naira we spend counts. The primary objective of this initiative is to assist government in identifying opportunities to reduce wasteful and inefficient spending by doing more with less. The Ministry of Finance has emphasised the need for the efficiency unit to provide concrete policy recommendations to generate savings for higher priority uses, especially capital expenditure.